Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Abundant Wellness Podcast. Today, we have the privilege of having Andy Ellwood with us. Andy is the founder and CEO of Stretch, which is a shopping intelligence platform. I know this isn't my normal, conversation type that we have, but I actually am really excited to have him here today to share with us why grocery shopping has such an impact on us and what we can do to get some power back in terms of our rights as consumers, being informed about where we're spending our money, transparency and pricing. So many of us, have been hit hard with the raise in prices of groceries since the pandemic. And so I, for one, am excited to really learn from you, Andy, today what we can do to not just help other people, but really also just be more informed consumers about what our rights are. So introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and what prompted, what kind of led you to this place? Because I feel like there's a little bit of an interesting backstory there.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you for having me. Excited for the conversation. And I think that, I am a new dad. And I think that that's probably the thing that really kind of prompted this foray into this company that I'm building. But I've been an entrepreneur, for my whole life. I started my first company when I was 12 because,
wow.
$1 a month allowance wasn't cutting it for me. And so I was like, how do I make more? And so I asked the neighbor if I could mow their lawn, and that turned into, mowing a lot of people's lawns, through junior high and high school, and almost not going to college because I was running a company and I had teams and crews, and so I've been paying taxes since I was 12 and always kind of had this entrepreneurial bug. But studied finance in college and then figured out I was pretty good at selling people things, and kind of came up through the sales ranks and finance and then luxury travel before joining my first startup in 2010, and that was right when the App Store had just launched. And so the company that we built in 2010 was acquired by Facebook, and that was my first experience with building a company and then having an acquisition happen, and learned a lot about community and how to build features that helped solve real world problems for folks. Went from there to building a company called Waze, which a lot of people have heard of, the traffic and navigation app.
Yes, I love that app. I I haven't used it in a while, but I didn't know you built. That's crazy.
Yeah. I helped open up the New York office for them. They were a small startup in Israel, and I was a part of the team when we had 3 million users, and then Google bought us when we had 60 million users, and so it was a rocket ship that I was very happy to be a part of. I got to see, we got to see the kind of the global scale of building, and the thing I learned at Waze was just around collective knowledge. Mm-hmm. The idea of everybody has a little data point, and if you put it all together, it creates smart ideas and smart opportunities for everybody.
Wow.
And so that's kind of always been the thing that ran through my head was the power of technology. If we all contribute a little bit of information, maybe we could help each other out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel like that's been kind of bastardized and taken in the wrong direction by a lot of the oligarchs that now run tech in the world.
Right.
But we can talk about that later. And then after that, I've just kind of been trying to build companies and kind of think through what problems do I have, and could I use technology to solve them?
Awesome.
And so that's kind of been kind of the thesis for what got me to this point, and now we're building Stretch.
Amazing. I love that. And entrepreneurs, we're kind of a rare, weird breed where there will always be this itch to fix and build bridges, right? And so I love hearing that, because it's you really are, I think some of us are just wired that way. I went to nursing school, obviously, to become a nurse, and then I left that and built my own business. And it wasn't because, my life was not stressful enough at the time, but it was more just I'm always seeing the need to fill in the gaps, and that is really, it's not just because we want to build things, it's because we want to serve people, and that's really what I hear when you're talking. So you became a new dad, and what did you start noticing with pricing and groceries and all of that stuff?
Yeah. I kind of didn't think about my groceries as much before I became a dad.
Right.
It was kind of my wife and I needed something for dinner. Great, I'll just go to the store that's most directly on my way home. But then we started buying a lot of things we never bought before. And I was like, well, how much does that actually cost? And there was the Amazon price, and then there was the Walmart.com price, and then there was the local store price. And there was a bunch of local stores. There's 5 or 6 stores that I could go to between the office and home. And I was like, well, which one has the best price for not just for the one thing that I need, but for the 10 things that I need, the 15 things that I need. We buy a lot of berries these days.
Yes.
And,
I can relate.
And somebody's like, no, don't go to that store for berries. Go to this store for berries. I was like, well, how do you know? Like, well, I went to a bunch of the stores, and I was like, people are price comparing by going from store to store to store, and their answer might be true this week, but if there's a sale, if there's a special, if there's a loyalty opportunity, like that price changes next week.
Right.
And it changes on one item, does it change on the other 9 things on my grocery list? And so, I was thinking to myself, for most other things that I purchase, I have a source of truth. I have a place that will give me an answer for how much it costs and what are the trade-offs. If I'm buying a flight home, I grew up in Texas and I'm going back to see my dad, Kayak will tell me on Delta it costs this much, on American Airlines it costs this much, on United it costs this much. If you want to fly out of this airport or that airport this time of day or that time of day, this day of the week or that day of the week. Great. Those are the variables, and I can kind of figure out, okay, I'm willing to spend this much more to fly at this time of day on this airline.
Right.
All right, I understand what the trade-off is. But I have status on American Airlines, so I'll pay a little bit extra and cross my fingers for the upgrade.
Right.
When I was trying to do the same thing with groceries, there was no place that I could go to understand for my whole basket, for everything that's on my list this week, how much it costs. And so that's what we built with Stretch. So Stretch, easiest way to think about it is it's a smart grocery shopping list. You tell me what's on your list this week, and Stretch will go and shop all the stores in your area and come back to you with the answers and says, this store it's 110, this store it's 130, this store it's 150. But if you have a discount code or you're a loyalty member or there's a coupon, we'll show there. So we're a new company. We launched about a year ago.
Awesome.
But we're already in 30,000 stores across the country.
Wow.
And so we're growing quickly, but we're just doing our best to serve shoppers and give a little bit of relief, not just from prices, but also from the stress of the question that I think we all ask as parents is, am I doing this right? Is this the best that I can do for my family? And that's kind of the goal that we're trying to solve with a simple free app.
I love it. And I love it for a lot of reasons. One, I hate going to multiple stores. And 2, I think that most Americans, and maybe this is an overgeneralization, are working more. So to bridge the financial gap that's happened, right? So there's this 30% increase in the cost of groceries on average, which means that you have to buffer your income for that, which means that most of us are working more than we were 5 years ago to bridge that gap, which means we don't have as much time. Like I know I don't, to go shopping around to different stores. And then you add on top of that different needs for different family members, right? So we have kids with some food sensitivities. I can't just find everything at Fred Meyer. I usually have to go to multiple stores. So if you so there's such a mental load that comes with that. It's not just about the pricing, although I love that the app fixes that problem. But it's not just about that. To me, I'm thinking there's such a relief in knowing I don't have to maybe drive around to all of these different stores or spend 20 minutes looking online. It sounds like the goal of the app is to really remove some of that burden. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We say don't grocery alone.
Okay.
Let Stretch do the hard part, and that's really how we're building this. Is we want it to, building a shopping list. 90% of people shop with a list of some kind, but most of the lists are dumb, right? It's paper on the side of your fridge. It's a text from your spouse, or maybe it's an Apple Note. And then once you're done with the list, like nothing happened, right? You just throw it away. You recycle it for next week, but it doesn't get smarter. It doesn't understand your preferences. It doesn't know about dietary restrictions and how you might be able to bob and weave to find that all at one store, or to say on those things that are priorities for you, where you're brand loyal. This is the store where you want to go this week for the things that you don't care what brand they are. Right. This is a store you could go to for those. And so that's one of the things that we're working on, is being able to, don't go to a bunch of stores, but if you want to optimize time and money and brand preferences, here's the best choice for you. And so each week that you use Stretch, it gets a little bit smarter, saves a little bit more of your preferences, knows that there's certain things that you won't budge on. right? Like if I come home with Pepsi, my wife will send me back to the store.
Yeah.
She wants Diet Coke.
Yes,
right?
They do taste different. They do. Yeah.
There is a difference there, right? They are not the same in our household. But if I come home with De Cecco pasta versus Barilla pasta, like I'm not, we're not going back to the store for that. So, it's still in a blue box. So I think that there's certain things that are you can do the trade-off. Other things, it's brand loyalty, but especially, as you mentioned, with food sensitivities, allergens, organic, like a lot of different families have certain things that they're, that are non-negotiables for them.
Right. And
Stretch is getting smarter and smarter the more that you use it to be able to allow for that in your family.
That's awesome. Does it pair with any other apps like Instacart? Is there like a goal to eventually, you might not have an answer for this, I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on that, if there's any kind of pairing that's already happening?
Yeah, my dream, and this is, from my point of view, is I want to have my split list where it says, here's the 7 things that I should buy at the local store, and here's the 9 things that will be delivered tomorrow. And that's the best price. It saves me, the most convenience, and maybe it's around package sizes. I don't have to carry all the things.
Right.
Whatever it might be. And so being able to, the split list will hopefully come out, by the end of the year.
Awesome.
To allow for that. But that's and then part of it will be, pushing it to the Instacarts, Uber Eats, DoorDashes, or even one day, hopefully curbside pickup.
Nice.
At certain stores. So,
sweet.
Hit one button on Stretch and then, have somebody bring it to your house or swing by and pick it up, at your local store.
Very
cool. But we're, there's a known universe of ways that people get groceries to their house, and we're trying to, be the place that you originate your list, and then we'll help you kind of decide what makes sense for purchases after that.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I know not everybody, grew up in the early 80s, early 90s when, the way that you knew how much groceries cost was by opening the ad and flipping through all of the ads at all of the different stores. Like I remember watching my parents, clipping their coupons and figuring out which stores saved them $2 on, a can of or pack of toilet paper, things like that. And we don't sometimes we get ads, but that's not how people are organizing their grocery shopping, at least not for me. And so it sounds like this is something that saves time and, will save money. And tell us, is it a paid service or a free service? And is it something that we can just all download from the App Store? Yeah.
So if you go to the App Store today, search Stretch Groceries. It's a free download, and it will always be free for shoppers.
Awesome.
We are grateful that if we route a basket to a grocery store or to Instacart, they pay us a little
awesome.
Little referral fee, and so that's the the beginning of how we'll be monetizing and kind of turn this into a full business. But for the shopper, we're not charging you money to save you money.
Awesome. No, that's a relief to hear. I mean, it would be, I think, reasonable to expect, most apps cost something. So I was just curious if there was a fee for downloading or a fee for using, but it sounds like really the goal is just accessibility for the average shopper, to just be able to find what they need easily and minimize stress. So I'm personally really excited to use it and give it a try and just see how that helps take some of the mental load off of me, but also save the budget, right? So How did you come up with the name? Like what prompted the, I think when I hear the name, I think I can imagine what that might be, but I'm curious what motivated that for you guys.
Yeah, well, I think that you mentioned something about budget and time. Those are kind of on a continuum, right? There's some people who have more money than time.
Yeah.
Right, and so convenience is their number one priority, right? So they might just always order on Instacart, and the food just shows up, and they kind of pay attention to how much it costs, but they just need the food to be delivered at home because they're busy.
Yeah.
And that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is people who have more time than money, and they spend time clipping coupons, opening 7 apps, and building a spreadsheet of the different retailer offers for the week. And and I know people at both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
I feel like most people are somewhere in the middle where they don't feel like they have extra time or extra money.
Right.
And they're trying to stretch both. And so that was kind of where the name came from, was we wanted to give people the ability to stretch in whichever direction they needed to this week. And what we've found, with a lot of the folks we talk to is, whoever's the grocery shopper in the household. Sometimes it's the household CEO, sometimes it's, the spouse who's coming home from work at the end of the day, whatever it might be. They have different priorities based on when they're doing the grocery shop.
Yes.
So if the kids are at school and it's 10:30 on a Tuesday, you might be willing to drive a little bit further to save $30.
Right.
So, okay, cool. That store's not the one I usually go to, but wow, look at those sales, look at the coupons. For everything that's on my list, I know it's worth it to drive a little bit further to save, whatever that amount is. And we call that proximity pricing preference. How far would you drive to save how much money? Different people, different number, right? Mm-hmm. But then other times, it's Thursday, there's 3 kids in the back seat, there's 4 things that you need in order to get dinner on the table tonight. You don't care how much it costs.
Right, because you do not want to be trapped in the car any longer with these hungry children. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what we want Stretch to be, is kind of that source of truth, to be able to, to say, hey, I need to save money today.
Right.
Where can I go? Or I need to save time today. Where can I go? And that's really the way that we're designing the app, is to make it, as you said, take that cognitive load down and be able to know, hey, it's worth it for me to drive a little bit further, or it's worth it for me to pay a little bit more.
Right.
But it gets me what I'm looking for, and I think for most people that changes, given the circumstances.
Absolutely, and I love that you gave a couple examples of that, because it really does vary week to week. Like some weeks, I get off work a little bit early on Thursdays, and so that's payday for us, and I will go do my grocery shopping and save $20 instead of paying the $20 delivery, whatever, from Instacart. Other weeks, it's not the best use of my time to do that, right? Maybe a kid has sports, or it's been a long work day and I don't feel like peopling anymore. Like, not that I would ever get tired of people, but you know what I'm saying?
I do.
So I love that it sounds like this really was built around the shopper in mind and the shopper's experience and what the needs are of people, which really is, really kind of resolving that gap problem that we're experiencing and providing some really good solutions for that. So what else do you want our listeners to know about you or the app or the opportunity? I'd love for you to just take a few minutes and share whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, one thing that I've been building companies on the internet for almost 20 years now. And the internet is not always kind.
No.
But I've been really, really pleasantly surprised and pretty excited by the feedback that we've gotten around Stretch. We're a new company. We're still learning. And so I would love it if your listeners would give us a shot and let us know how we can be better. Because when I think about what this becomes, right, the more shoppers that we have on our platform, the more we're voting that pricing transparency matters.
Yes.
And we already have a good number of big grocery stores that have paid attention to us, that have seen what we're doing and are kind of like, what would it look like if we collaborated, worked together? And because they're curious, right? And especially in the new all the new technology that's being built, from AI to everything else, people are thinking about the way things were isn't the way that the things can maintain.
Right.
And if we have a lot of shoppers, if we have a lot of families saying, I want price and transparency for groceries, we can shift some of the paradigm around price and transparency, around understanding what you're buying before you even leave your home. And that's really the thing that we're working for. So if you have ideas, if your listeners have ideas for how we can make this better, we're adding new stores every day. We're getting better at our swaps every day. Because the equivalency of, if you say crunchy peanut butter, at Trader Joe's only sells Trader Joe's crunchy peanut butter.
Right.
Whole Foods sells 365 brand crunchy peanut butter.
Right.
Kroger will sell you Jif and peanut butter and Skippy.
Right.
But in the app, we have to normalize all three options.
Yeah.
And make sure that you actually have as close to an apples to apples comparison across. And so the more people that use it, the better data we get, the better preferences we understand. And so, feedback is a gift, and
Yes.
I love all of it. I read everything that comes in.
Awesome.
We've got a big feedback button in the app that tells us
Sweet.
how we can be better. But also, we really want to do this as kind of a community and a movement. As I mentioned,
Yeah.
I learned that at Waze, right? Like, we remapped the entire world. And,
Right.
And we did it through community, and that ended up being, saving people a lot of time stuck in traffic. And so
Amazing.
I'm hoping that Stretch can do the same thing.
I love it. And I love that you mentioned voting with your shopping, because I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but one of the things that can happen when the economy shifts is it can feel like this is something that's completely out of your control, right? All of a sudden prices skyrocketed, and now you're put in this position where you're having to choose between, do I buy toilet paper or do I buy food for my kids this week? And maybe that's the extreme end, but I think all of us were doing that to a degree, right? And so I love that this gives a little bit more of that power back to the consumer. I do have a question. You may or may not know the answer, but in regards to shopping transparency with groceries, is there, in the world of commercialism and consumerism, is there like I'm not even sure what the word would be for this, so pardon me while I just kind of fumble through it.
Sure.
Are stores required to be transparent about their prices? I mean, like, yes, we know what we see when we go into the store. We see the little price tag.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like there should be like a cohesive price across the board for certain things, and there's not. So like I can there's like 2 things I need at this one grocery store that's like 30 minutes away. And so it really has to be worth it for me to go get those 2 things. But it's because I can't find them anywhere else, and they're like a nice little treat every once in a while. They are more expensive than anywhere else. And like all of the groceries there are more expensive than anywhere else. So can you tell me a little bit about what's happening there? I'm just curious, because I've always wondered, like, why are they allowed to do that, and what is actually happening behind the scenes, if you know the answer.
Yeah, so there's different pricing strategies that different retailers use. So everyday low price, Walmart, right? They're just saying we're going to sell at volume, so we can have
keep our prices low,
listed low price, right? Then there's places like Dollar General who do a tremendous amount of coupons, a tremendous amount of loyalty, and like it fluctuates. It's one of the most complex, pricing systems. There's 3 different prices. There's the list price, the loyalty price, and probably the coupon or sale price, right?
I see.
Then there's Kroger or Fred Meyer or Giant Eagle, which have kind of they're very loyalty dependent on prices. And then there's kind of your specialty stores, the Sprouts, the Whole Foods, where they're like, and Trader Joe's, we're going to have things that you can't buy anywhere else.
Yeah.
So if you want them, come here, but we get to charge whatever we want for that. Right. A lot of stores have what they call loss leaders, where they'll put something on sale where they're going to lose money, but they know you can't buy it anywhere else locally. And so it'll get you into the store, and they hope you buy a bunch of other stuff while you're there.
I see.
And so when somebody has kind of the only supply, and people who have that demand want to go to that store, they can kind of charge whatever they want. But even across across Walmarts, right? There's 3 or 4 different tiers of Walmarts.
Yeah.
That all might be within a 10, 20 mile radius, and you're going to pay a different price at a different Walmart for the same exact items. Right, and it's a very, very complex system that works really well for the corporations.
Yes.
And
not as well for the people.
Doesn't work very well for the shoppers if the shoppers have the information in their hands.
Yeah, right.
And hopefully, very soon with Stretch, more and more shoppers will have that information in their hands and be able to make more informed decisions.
Awesome. Well, that actually makes me feel a lot better, because I was like, I'm, shopping at these places. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the strategy here? Because, like, the strategy can only be, and maybe that's just because I'm a business owner, and so I think about, I'm not just thinking about the cost of things. I'm wondering how it works, right, and why it's working for
100%.
them. So it's not working for the consumer. It works for the corporations, which we know, but it helps me to understand that I'm not crazy for noticing that, like, this doesn't make any sense. There's like a different pattern, a different, strategy for each store. And what we really need as the consumers is to know, like, where can I save the most money and my time, right? And make better informed decisions if that's a goal that we have, which I think it's everybody's goal to get the cost of groceries down at this point. So, well, I loved this conversation, Andy. I think this is a fantastic tool. I'm going to download it as soon as we're done. I'm excited to try it. Where can people find you? And tell us where. I'm assuming just through the App Store, but I'll make sure to drop the link in the show notes if you wouldn't mind sharing with people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, stretchgroceries.com is our website. And in the App Store, you can just search Stretch Groceries, and it'll come up as the first choice for you.
Awesome.
And then I grew up on the internet, so I'm at Andy Ellwood on every platform, except for TikTok. I'm the Andy Ellwood.
Ooh, even better.
Yeah, right.
Sounds so professional.
It felt a little egomaniacal, but it was what was available. So
take what you get.
But I talk a lot about groceries on TikTok, and a thing that I did not expect to do is I keep going viral on TikTok.
Awesome.
My last video has 600,000 views.
That's
just
crazy.
talking about the fact that we should be able to save money on groceries, and so I'm super grateful to
Yeah.
everybody who's in
Everyone
all the
agrees.
conversations.
Yes.
And people are very, very lively in the comments, and it's fun to see how many opinions people have about groceries.
Yeah,
but
no kidding.
we're doing our best to serve as many of them as possible.
I love it. Well, I'm so grateful that that you reached out, that we were able to get you on the show, and of course for the service that you're providing. I think this is going to be a really, really useful tool for people. And like I said, I'm really excited to try it. So thank you so much for being on here, Andy. And thank you for listening. Yeah, absolutely.